some faces from last night. It's a perfect South by. Is everyone having a good South by so far? Come on, show of hands. It's good. It's good. I'm so happy to be here, actually. It's a little blustery. You're a local, you know these things.
I'm loving it.
And it's like German weather, right?
It is Hamburg weather.
It's Hamburg
it's
weather.
Not Munich weather.
It is not. It's not Santa Monica weather. Anyway, thanks for everybody coming, joining, and it's great last 2 days here. I know you all will be here for the rest of the week. I leave on Tuesday, but you certainly could come back if you haven't tried a demo. Who's done a demo? Raise of hands. Who hasn't done demos? Who's going to do demos? Felix. I love saying
I want
that.
this for you, Felix.
You're like the last of the party. I'm Kathleen Cohen, and I am an advisory board member here for holoride. So thrilled to be watching holoride over the last 3 years grow and be here at South by. And if I have to point out, our common denominator here is Emily Ullman in not in Los Angeles, but Emily Ullman in Berkeley, who is the
Kevin Bacon
of how
ARX
all
or
of this,
VR.
how all of this has come together. I first met Nils back 3 years ago, so I'm happy to be here, and recently reconnected with Anne, which is now in real life, and the fact that we all get to be here in real life for the first time after 2 years is amazing. So I'm a tech humanist. I'm also a part futurist, although lately I call myself a presentist, not a futurist, because I'm like, we're already there. So why call myself a futurist anymore?
I'm a motorist.
You're a motorist, and what are you?
I'm futurist through and through.
Okay,
I'm a super futurist.
You're a super, you want spacecraft. You want spacecraft, that's what I know.
Yeah, nanobots, give it all to me.
Yeah, exactly. I had to revise this idea of being a futurist. Obviously, like, you know, we're seeing the future, and we're seeing the future here today. But I have a consultancy called the Collaboratorium, and we focus on XR research, we focus on client projects and public engagement. And I also have been, as Felix knows, the jury chair and keynote speaker for the Aurea Awards, which is Europa Park's big contribution to AR/VR excellence in Europe. And this is where I met Nils, and that was 3 years ago, did we say?
Yeah.
3 years ago, holoride was one of the recipients for Best in Experience.
You were a tough hero, though.
I was, right?
Yeah.
Was I giving you a hard time?
Yeah. Yeah. You asked the toughest questions.
I asked the tough questions.
Everybody needs somebody to keep them honest.
Yeah. That's why we asked her afterwards to become our advisor, because
yeah.
the
that's
questions were
awesome.
so tough.
Yeah, Nils was so kind and said, "Can you join the board?" And I said I would love to. And then I met the other founders who were such top A quality and team members for holoride that some of you are all here, if not everybody is here, or you've met them in a car. And it has been a great journey to look at what I talk about as the tribrid world of in real life, in digital, and in world, all collapsing right now. And if anybody's sitting at the forefront of all of those things, it's holoride. And that's what I get so excited about in the future of how we move from your house to the outside world, to in real life, and what that seamless experience could be. So I'm super excited for this talk. I have spent many years in media and entertainment, DreamWorks Interactive, IBM, and Disney, and after that thought about, so what is it that I want to do? And with that, today, being able to introduce Nils and Anne on this panel about the Metaverse to the Motorverse and how we're turning vehicles into experiences and experience devices. We're going to have a free discussion and sort of set up first. Nils, please introduce yourself and a little bit about what this last 3 years has been for you.
I hope you brought a little bit of time. So, my name is Nils. I'm one of the 3 co-founders of holoride. Our journey our joint journey started back in 2015 while we were still working at Audi and started a project that wasn't even called holoride back then. But I was running Audi's digital business department, thinking about new business models, giving a talk internally, how we can monetize car data and use car data and location data combined with immersive tech. And in my team was Marcus, and Marcus approached me afterwards and said, hey, I know someone in the pre-development of autonomous driving, which was Daniel, who's playing around with VR in a car, and maybe the three of us should meet. And that's where it all started. We met quite often at nighttime and weekends to push this project further. And very early we took a prototype to the US, to some game studios and film studios in California, and showed them the tech and asked them whether this is of interest. Some of the studios that are engaged in film, gaming, and theme parks were like, oh wow, this is like the fourth element to it. It's not theme park, but it's not game, but it's something in between where we can exploit IP and take people on journeys, and we can reach a very captive audience. And this is where we started to think about the business concept in more detail. And one of the feedbacks we got was like, it's great that Audi is doing it, but this doesn't scale for creators. So why don't you make it agnostic? And then we said, yeah, actually, this is a good idea. Let's see what Audi says about it. And we were very, very fortunate that the board of management of Audi followed the recommendation. We took a very unconventional approach to spin out, we have to say. So colleagues from Audi are still here, but it's not a recommendation if you want to make a career with an Audi, because we bypassed every committee there is and just invited our CEO for a ride. We picked him up at the airport. I called the secretary and asked when he'll arrive, and we asked his driver to follow us and gave him a demo and pitched in the car that this needs to be agnostic and independent from one car manufacturer. And I think it was a very, very bold move that the board of management back then approved this approach, because it's an adventure. It's something they haven't done before. And so a few weeks later, we've founded the company. We announced at CES, and since then, the last 3 years have been quite a ride. As you can see, Audi is still a big supporter, and yesterday they announced that they're the first car manufacturer that have holoride ready cars as of summer, which is great. So thanks again, Audi. Thanks again also for hosting us here. I think you picked a fantastic location. That's I'll can go into detail and talk about like the 3 years. We have a lot of anecdotes, but
that's
maybe.
Great. And yesterday on the main stage was fantastic. And I don't know if you all were able to see yesterday's talk, but you covered areas that we'll cover again today for those that missed it. So with that, Anne, I was so happy that Emily put us in touch, and we have so many friends in common from Silicon Valley to New York to here.
Yes.
And you're a local.
Yes.
So
as of end of 2020, yes.
But you went to UT at Austin.
Yes, I did. Hook 'em horns.
Hook 'em horns is what I was going to go there.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then I ran. I was on 6th Street, and I thought I'll never make it to college. So I'll never make it to school. Anyway, you're the CEO of Click Media. You talk publicly as a TV pundit on Forbes, on O'Reilly. You're an O'Reilly author as well.
Yes.
And tell us a little bit about what you've been talking about here, too, with AI, with privacy, and the metaverse.
Sure, yes. So my name is Anne Ahola Ward. I am a CEO of an agency that's been around since 2009. I have 6 employees. We go in, we help startups grow. I am a published author. I wrote a book for O'Reilly in 2017. I also am a TV tech pundit. I go and explain trends to people, to consumers, because I think as a futurist, that's why I call myself a super futurist, because I'm beyond, just saying I do stuff on Twitter. I actually, will wake up at 5 a.m. on Easter, drive to Sacramento and do a segment explaining memes to the good people of Sacramento, which I actually did do. Yeah. And I think part of what I love about technology is how it enhances lives, but the issue is that if it's inaccessible, then it becomes limiting. So I very firmly believe, as somebody who understands technology through and through, has only ever been in technology their whole career. I started as a developer, migrated into SEO as the field was forming. I have a responsibility to educate those who don't understand so that I bring them up with me, because seeing that transformation of someone, I had a very old friend from New York actually yesterday ask me about blockchain. She's like, so what really is it? And I could tell she was embarrassed for asking. I was like, it's a public database that helps establish trust between counterparties. She was like, oh, that's all it is? So things become intimidating to people when they don't understand it. And so I think that's why South by Southwest is such a great conference, because it helps showcase technology. You know, I got locals to come to something which often doesn't happen.
Yeah. Well, you were going to bring Tony Parisi over here earlier, yes?
Yes, yeah, I'm sure I'll see him later. We got into it on Friday, we got into trouble, but I'm sure we'll be back at it again now. His lovely wife has flown in, so.
Well, I was going to bring that up actually, because we were talking about Tony's republished article back in the fall on his 7 principles of the metaverse, and what I had asked Nils is, there's 7 principles of the metaverse, what are the principles of the motorverse? What are we coining that as? So maybe you can share the principles of holoride versus what you see the future of mobility might be.
Yeah, so the challenge with the metaverse discussion currently is that it's a very often used term lately. I think since, was it October? When did Facebook rebrand? So afterwards, it was like an avalanche of metaverse discussions. However, the definition isn't clear yet. Everybody has a different perspective on the metaverse. So what I personally see as the common ground for a definition is physical reality merged with digital reality creates the next reality, a new type of experience and basically it's a more consumer-friendly term for the spatial web. So the internet becomes all around us. We travel the spaces, and everything is connected. And this idea is not 100% clear yet, because most people think about, okay, it's Facebook, Oculus, now it's Meta, so the metaverse is like a new version of Second Life, so a fully virtual space. That's not the case. I think the magic happens when you combine physical reality with a digital reality to create a new type of experience that is all around you. So this is our core principle, by the way, because we combine physical and physical or haptic feedback with virtual reality, and also use map data, so persistent real world locations. Our framework is always the globe, the street network where cars are moving. So that's our core principle. Then we share a lot of the values that are being pushed currently by one of our partners, HTC. They say it needs to be open. Yes, it needs to be open, because currently everything that is out there as an example for the metaverse is a walled garden. Fortnite is a walled garden. Roblox is a walled garden. Rec Room is a walled garden. So there is no interconnected metaverse yet. So it's a little bit like the first days of the internet. I'm old enough and still young enough to know it, but AOL was my first entry point to the internet. So it's very similar to this. And I think what we'll see is the barriers will break, and a lot of people refer to Decentraland as the metaverse, but I think what they are missing is the real world connection. But I'm not a big fan of land sales, virtual land sales, which is a totally different story. So it needs to be open, needs to have this combination, and it needs to be super creator friendly. So for studios, for indie studios, but also for every single individual that wants to build and participate. And this is where I see the biggest hurdle yet, because there are no tools yet that everybody can start building for the metaverse. So this is like the third area I think is super crucial. And then the social aspect, I think this is what Facebook, aka Meta stresses the most, has a very important component. It will also have a very important component for us, because also, even though maybe teenagers like to detach from their parents when they are on a ride, which is a good thing, which we are offering, but sometimes family or passengers would also like to interact. So the social space within the car or across cars could also be like a very nice growth area for us. So these are like the 4 cornerstones maybe if I think about it a little bit more, there might be even other aspects.
So you need to bring Tony over, have a conversation with Nils, and we need to recoin the 7 principles of the Motorverse. But you just did the demo.
I just have 4.
Yes.
I have 3 more to come.
I
So
know.
let me think about it.
We're in tools building. So how was the demo? And share the experience of you now looking at Motorverse with the demo that you just did.
Well, I mean, this is, I didn't know about holoride prior to the conference, so it was hard to imagine what it would be like.
Yeah.
But I definitely enjoyed it. I liked the game. I felt myself instantly getting competitive. Like the type A personality person that I am, I just instantly wanted to get all the points. I think I got over 6,000. I think that's good.
Wait, you and I must be similar because I got in the car and I said, how many points does Chris have? Because I want to beat him. That's all I said. All right.
Yeah,
anyway, moving on. Must be
so
similar.
I felt myself drawn into the game, and my sense of time sort of went away. Because you're not thinking about, well, how long is it? You know, like we can often be in demos. But I didn't feel that. I sort of lost a sense of time, which I think is a good thing.
But you also said, which was great, you said, I already can see multiplayer, and I can already see car-to-car experiences, which actually would be fantastic, and Nils weighed in on that quickly.
Yes.
Not that you hadn't thought of that, but how would that roll out?
Yeah, I mean, a multiplayer across cars is a technically challenging thing to do, but it's definitely something we have on our list because we're also a very competitive team in general. So comparing scores and stuff is important for us as well. However, we also wanna enable for just a very relaxing ride if you want to do it. It doesn't have to be a game all the time. It could be an educational experience, could be something what we see in the Asian markets being heavily requested when they get in touch with our tech, something about mindfulness, wellness, relaxation, well-being. And last but not least, once we have some decent productivity applications in the XR space, why not making this motion synchronized so that you can also have a lot of productive time while you're doing a car ride. So these are the 4 areas we are looking in, but we start with entertainment, and competition will be an interesting thing, but maybe we start with something amongst siblings on back seats. So that's create a little fight there.
Yeah, I can imagine. I have 3 brothers. I can already tell. The areas that I loved that you talked about yesterday were the content side, the hardware side, the vehicle side, and then the commerce side.
Yeah.
And I know, Anne, you focus so much on the blockchain NFT world, and we recently, I'm only saying we as an advisory board member, launched the RIDE tokens, which has been a complete success. So maybe you can weigh in a little bit from this being a startup and holoride being a startup. I came from the biggest little startups from Disney, from IBM, and DreamWorks in all separate divisions, and they had their own corporate challenges inside big corporations. But maybe you can just shed a little light on what you see in the last couple of days of South by, what you've talked about from NFTs and blockchain, and where holoride and their trajectory might shed some light, or you might be able to add some perspective.
The future of the company?
Well, no, yeah, the future of the company.
Bring it on.
Yeah, the future, the great psychic here. This idea of the Motorverse and the commerce side and tokenizing the experiences as far as content and new content partners.
Sure, yeah. I mean, I was the first woman to complete an STO under the ERC 884 standard, and I was doing it in 2018 with a NFT-based startup when I was trying to solve the problem of identity, digital identity, which, by the way, I was never going to solve as a 3-person team, but I tried. And so when I saw art start to take off, I was very excited about it because that's a great use case. It gets people excited. It's visual. It's the first thing that's happened on the blockchain that consumers have actually been able to understand. I see it as a way to, buy a house, buy a car. I see all these applications for it, but gaming was also right there because, borderless payments, there you go. There's loftier goals for it, like helping the unbanked and people escape poverty. I mean, beautiful missions. But I think the next great achievement of NFTs and crypto should absolutely be helping people monetize their content. I think in the early days of VR, when which anyone who knows me in VR mostly knows me as the woman who ran into the burning building that was Upload VR
That's right.
and saved them.
That's right. Yeah, you were their COO, right?
Yes.
You were their COO
Yes.
of Upload.
Yes.
I was only going to let you go there.
Well, thank you. But even in those days, I actually lost my train of thought thinking about them. That's what they do to me. But I saw just such potential for VR, but the hardware wasn't there. I knew those two conference tracks were always separate. Their VR conference would happen, and then there'd be a couple blockchain speakers. But now it's being lumped together, which is really exciting, because this is where we see, oh, I know why I brought that up. Because all of the people, I got to know the community. I went in because I knew that startup well. I knew the founders. I was the SEO that put them on the map, got them funded. But what made me stay in VR and stay passionate about VR was the women. And that's how I actually,
Amen.
yes, and that's how I actually met Emily Ullman.
Oh, terrific.
But the reason I went down this winding road was that I noticed that most content creators in VR, I'd say that I met, 80% were women, and they were all being financially supported by a spouse. And that really bothered me, that we have all these people that are passionate, beautiful artists. I saw some things in Tilt Brush I never thought, like big tiger heads and like cool stuff. But how do you make money? And so these two worlds I knew would combine, and they're starting to in a meaningful way. But that to me would be the ultimate way, is get paid for your content. And TikTok and these other platforms that have actually raised that a fund, very few of them are actually making enough money. Mm-hmm. So it's usually through sponsorship deals, or someone is helping them subsidize. And so I would love to see the market actually meet people where they are and pay them for their time. And NFTs were really one of the things that has started to help boost the creator economy. I mean, just look at the Ukraine. What it did there.
100%.
All Ukrainian artists I know have sold out of their NFTs, and then some.
Yeah. What's your opinion on where ride tokens and how fueling this content as an NFT economy moves forward? Yeah.
We started our journey into the blockchain space because the platform we are building, we wanted to say, needs to be transparent by design from the beginning. All other content platforms are centralized. They distribute revenue to their creative partners, but you have never a full transparency on how much was your content part of the life of people. So how often did they engage with it? We wanted to change this and say, hey, blockchain is a nice way, not the only way, but it's a nice way to do it, and because it's immutable, and you can see how long someone engaged with the content, and distribute the revenue based on this engagement time. Because if someone creates something that people love, then they should be entitled to more revenue. For example, if you look at like Squid Game, I think it was produced for $21 million US. It's the most successful show on Netflix so far. I think it's still the case.
Oh, I binged it.
And I think everybody did.
How could you not?
You're be the only one. Right?
But I haven't read any news about, did the creators of Squid Game actually get more revenue after, or a fair share of what maybe this brought to the platform? I don't know. I haven't read it. Maybe it's the case. Maybe it's not.
I heard they renegotiated very well for the sequel.
For the sequel. That's fair enough, because I think Netflix is a great platform for a lot of creators, because they fund a lot of great projects. They get out of their way and they can get creative. But hey, usually every platform should have an approach where you say you incentivize great content if it's being perceived by people. So we said, okay, this is one of the aspects, and then the token aspect came to it, and this gives another leverage for creators, because if you create an item that is being traded, you get royalties every time it's being traded. So I think this is also a fair method, and we've created a utility token, and the reason why when we did our ICO, we didn't sell to US citizens based in the US, because we would have needed SEC approval, because the US doesn't make the differentiation between utility token, security, and etc. So we didn't sell in the US. Now everyone can buy it, but we focused on a utility token with governance functionality, so the community can have an influence on the content that is being built for our platform. Then it will function as a as a payment token within our platform, so you can buy items with Ride token. You're incentivized if you do so. If you're a token holder, you get early access. There are a few utilities we have designed around Ride. In general, we want to expand the functionality and say this should be everything gamified in the mobility space. So it's a long journey, and we love the feedback we get. When we started looking into this, we looked at tech functionality, we looked at the upside for creators, but what we actually tapped in was a massive vocal community. So the community aspect is probably the biggest to the whole blockchain NFT crypto movement at the moment, which was for us extremely valuable because they start promoting what we are building, and because they're so excited
Your
about it.
Your success is their success.
Exactly, and you build this community over several months until you do your ICO, because you see the momentum, and Felix and his team, they helped me a lot with this, understanding these dynamics, and this was probably the best thing about it, because we have now a very strong community to tap into, and we changed a little bit our perspective, and that's why we said, hey, the money we collected with the ICO we'll give back to indie studios. So most of the money goes to indie studios to fund content for our platform. And so we hope that this will start a movement, in at least that we do some kind of contribution to the Metaverse idea from a different, the Metaverse idea with our Motorverse, so to really help a shift into this hopefully utopian approach of Metaverse, and not this
protopian. The becoming. We're in the becoming, the protopian era.
Well, isn't that the grand vision of Web3? Is that
it is, but it was
learning
also
it together.
But it was also the vision when the internet started, and somehow we got lost on the way, and everything got centralized, and so maybe now it's a more the time is right for it, maybe.
Yeah.
Well, we started out open source.
Yeah.
Web 1 was open source. It was just a bunch of static pages. But we started there and then somehow lost that battle. There's no way we could have known what would have happened.
Yeah.
Well, do you think Web 1 decentralized, Web 2 centralized, Web 3 decentralized, Web 4 AI what? Web 4 AI centralized?
She's the futurist. You are the futurist.
One of my
I'm the
favorite
presentist now.
Yes, one of my favorite predictions. I actually did a segment on this at the beginning of the year. If we're really going to be reading people's thoughts, if that's really happening, if we believe Neuralink, if we believe things Elon says. I mean, he said we were going to have driverless cars 5 years ago, but I think if we're going to be able to read human minds, that we're not far off from reading our pets' minds. So I would mortgage my house just to know what my cats really think of me.
There's a website for this.
Yes, so in 10 years, my hope is that we can read animals' thoughts. I also think, nanobots, we're going to have surgery done through needle injection. Robots go in and they just do the thing. No incisions, laparoscopic. I think that's definitely going to be a thing.
I'm excited for the next 50 years. Am I the only one, or is everybody looking at doomsday? I think this is great.
The future is absolutely here. It's just not yet distributed.
Okay, on that note, I'm gonna call out Joe Russo yesterday. So we had the good fortune, if nobody had seen the talk, to have Joe Russo on our advisory board weigh in from Prague. Where was he?
He's in Prague.
He's in Prague. He was filming. And he was talking about the big media conglomerates now becoming big gaming engines, gaming companies. And I wanted to jump, I said to Felix, I'm not going to say this publicly, and we'll hear him. Anyway, what I want to say to Joe is, I come from gaming. DreamWorks Interactive, we were the first Medal of Honor team. So we didn't know we were going to create a brand that was going to be the next 25 years, AAA on the side of every bus. But what you learned quickly was that game theory is rewards-based, and it levels people up, and it's Pavlovian. And yet I want to talk to the architects, and I want to talk to the community placemakers and the folks that are building community from a humanity-centric, human point of view first, before we're game theory leveling people up all the time. So that's my only thing I want to have a conversation with Joe about, and say from a storyline point of view and a human-first point of view, do we have to be rewards-based?
Yeah, I think what he stressed yesterday, he was coming more that's how I got to know him. He's coming more from the story angle, and the emotions that are being created with their work is in the center of everything they do. And he brought up this example of his first VR experience. You remember this yesterday, so that he was like, "Oh man, as filmmakers, it's over." What did he say? He didn't say we're fucked.
Yeah,
he didn't say that. He didn't.
We're
screwed.
We're
Okay,
screwed.
thanks. Okay. But it was like, okay, this is so much emotion we can't ever create with 2D content, and I think this is what drives him, and this doesn't necessarily have to do with leveling up, but what I understand from their deal they have done with Nexon is also taking and exploiting game IP and enriching it with more stories, that it's not just a game where you have to compete, but also build the universe around it and lets people discover the characters, the world, the emotions, the narratives. And this is what drives him. So I think this is his angle, but let's have a discussion with him.
I want to have a discussion
I don't know,
with him.
I have more gray hair since yesterday, because he was filming, literally, he's filming in Prague, and he dialed in like 10 minutes too late, and I was sitting there, and oh my God, hopefully he's coming. And he had his FaceTime on from his production van, and sitting in a car, having a conversation about content in cars, which was pretty authentic, I think.
Oh, it was great.
Yeah,
No,
it was
it
cool.
was great. So let's open this up for some Q&A from the audience. It's casual, this conversation. Does anybody have any questions for Anne, for Nils, for myself?
Yeah, when do we get some beer? Because
Yeah.
who made this
Who poured
rule
the
that there's
water?
only water for panelists? So, no, but
Does anybody have any questions? Lori Schwartz.
I was born with one of these.
Lori, do you want to introduce yourself?
Oh, sure. Lori H. Schwartz from Storytech. I do a lot of futurescaping as well, and a lot of event work and everything. I'm always thinking about this stuff. But a lot of the clients that I work with who are B2B tech companies are always saying, okay, but what's real? What's real? What's right now? And these are like HP, Intel, Qualcomm, like I'm in space and they go, no, that's not real right now. And then I go to a parent's house and the moms go, how do I get my iPhone to do this? You know what I mean? So we're dealing with like who I like to hang out with, and then, you know, the parents that I hang out with. And so I'm just curious, how do we turn this into use cases that we can sell? You know what I mean? So if you could talk a little bit about that.
I think that that's one of the biggest problems the metaverse has right now, is it's a buzzword to most people. They can't visualize what it is. And so what it's being pitched as and what it actually is today are two very different things. And so people don't trust that. General consumers don't trust what they cannot see. I think that there are two real versions of the metaverse, but I think one is more palatable to consumers than the other. There are just a certain faction of people that in older generations that aren't going to get on board necessarily with VR, so that's the immersive, fully immersive experience of what I think most people think it is. But a lot of people don't think of, at least industry insiders don't think of augmented reality, what that metaverse looks like. I think that is the use case that consumers are going to find more palatable in some ways in the early days, because they've already got that hardware in their pocket. So I think, you know, your best killer moment for AR was Snapchat, right? People were doing filters, putting stuff on their face, and they understood that. So I think until people can really truly see it for themselves with hardware they have, it's just going to be a thing that people talk about to them. Till they take a holoride and they actually see, oh, okay, I'm immersed in this experience and it didn't hurt me and I'm okay. This is a thing. Like, that's a great use case, right? So I think we have to think of it is not just one way to experience it. I think the metaverse is a network of worlds. I disagree with Tony's principles on that. He's like, there's one metaverse. No, I think that it's a network of worlds, not one world.
I think it's a great question. The way we'd like to contribute is we now have announced at Mobile World Congress that we're collaborating with HTC Vive. The Vive Flow is the first headset that is holoride ready. So it's a very comfortable or comfortable to wear a device, very lightweight, more like sunglasses, that lowers the barrier. It's not that you have to put on a helmet and have a TV in your face. It's a different form factor that it's great for cars. I don't know whether they intended it, but as soon as we learned about the device, we said that's something we see as the right thing to start with.
It was great.
Yeah, exactly.
It doesn't mess up your hair.
It doesn't mess up my hair, exactly. So that important aspect.
Our hair's a thing.
Yeah. And the car is the perfect motion platform. So even at lower speed, you get this feeling, okay, there is some haptic feedback, and this paired in real time with a virtual experience makes it more immersive. And that's what I said, physical reality and digital reality combined for a new experience. I have the hope that by the end of the year, once we have holoride ready cars out there and we ship experiences, that by the end of the year people will say, oh yeah, the Metaverse, I have an idea, it's something like holoride. This would be ideal. I don't know whether we get there, but the team tries hard.
We're getting there.
I want to weigh in on an idea. Tell me,
Bring-
shoot it down or not. Several years ago at the Aurea Awards, I was introduced to Thomas Wagner and VR Coaster. And VR Coaster is literally riding a physical roller coaster wearing full virtual reality. So if you're somebody who would get sick on a roller coaster, believe it or not, you wouldn't. And it was an amazing use case. One thing that was really interesting that I said would happen in Europe, would never happen in the United States, is that you're in the queue line wearing your gear, and you actually have to cross over that 4-inch gap in the queue line, and you're in the queue line the whole time. Maybe it's a 6-inch gap between the queue line to get into your actual roller coaster cart, which is just a question of trust right there. Is this tracking right? Everybody's like, and mine was in Danish. It wasn't even in English, and I was like, oh, this is great.
Du tale danska?
No. But I knew enough to try and follow the directions. Made it safely, did the ride. They actually developed 15 minutes of extra content in case the ride stopped, which our ride did stop. And I was thinking, is there a problem with the ride, or they were genius in designing this content because I was so immersed? Well, it was both. But the point is, I have recently worked with the Anthem AI team to look at transitional care from your house to a car to a facility. And so my question to holoride is, will there be, whether it's the Flow or the next iteration of glasses, from your home into car entertainment, and will you be carrying a storyline or asking developers to look at that transition?
I think this is a very good point. Some of the developers we work with already pitched similar ideas because they have games out there or experiences out there that work in the living room, and thought about maybe doing something that is then working on the road. So
Yes.
they start thinking about it, but it's I mean, there are infinite possibilities. You just need people that are interested enough to build it, and some of the studios indicated that they are, so there might be.
Yeah,
why
I was
not?
so happy to see the list of game developers as partners yesterday. It was super exciting, so I'm excited to see what's coming down the pipeline.
Yeah,
Does
great.
anybody have any other questions? Yes.
Hi, Nils, this is for you especially. Loved the presentation yesterday. Now, the main question I had since yesterday was, classic Metaverse looks at time spent as the primary matrix moving in, whether it's the number of hours you spent, the score you've got. What would be the matrix for the Motorverse when we get into it? Because we obviously can't have 6 hours spent in the car. So how would we actually go about mapping that?
The time you spend in the car or in the experience? Or?
What would be the matrix for gauging the success in the Motorverse?
Okay. So
Happiness.
That's happiness is a very good thing. Yeah. So if people, once they exit a ride, say they had a great time, whether it was more fun, more productive, or just learned something. But if you look at the hard numbers, it would probably be the time you spend in experiences compared to the overall ride time you're doing. And the average ride, if you globally look at the average ride time, is about 22 minutes. And this is a fairly nice time to have experiences also in VR at this stage. I doubt that if you do a 10-hour trip that you'll spend in VR 10 hours. However, we have people in our team that did long car rides and continued playing 4 hours. I think Michael holds the record for 3.5 hours, if I'm not mistaken. Can you help me, Tree? I think it was 3.5 hours, 2.5 hours. He spent a lot of time on one ride. But maybe it's the share of how much you engage with the content if you want to have a hard metric. But a good question. But I look more at the qualitative aspect. If you think this wasn't a dull ride, this was an exciting ride, then we have achieved something. Yeah.
Lori Schwartz. Is there a mic?
Yeah, over there.
I'm thinking about all sorts of exciting things while you guys are talking. Are you also looking into that bridge between the metaverse and the regular verse, meaning location-based experiences? So, because this has been talked with
Yes.
brands forever, where we're driving by a Rite Aid.
Yes.
And I'm in the metaverse. I'm having an experience in the metaverse, and I'm going to get some messaging that I'm physically by a Rite Aid and things like that. Maybe you could talk a little bit because that's the shiz.
So with our SDK, you can build procedural as well as persistent content. And the magic is if you combine those things. So imagine the car travels the real world. It hopefully always stays on the road. So you can procedurally generate objects, worlds around this based on the road network. But since we use map data, you can place things at certain geolocations. So creators can already do it. So now you can think about all these location-based aspects. You can point at every POI there is, point of interest there is, or at every Starbucks there is. However, if you do so, it always should have an added value to the experience. You'll not see holoride experiences full of advertising because we sell out the space because commercial companies want us to do so. You'll not see that. We'll have smart integrations if it makes sense and if it adds to the experience. But the combination of persistency and procedural generated content creates a lot of magic and a lot of possibilities.
I think it's a 50-50. If it's the hyper-reality video that Keiichi Matsuda did like 3 or 4 years ago, which I have talked about, I shake my head no. So I'm really happy to hear that it's...
I was on a TechCrunch conference, TechCrunch Mobility in 2019, and the first question I got from after my presentation was, how are you going to finance yourself? Are you selling ad space? And I said, no, I can assure you one thing, this will not be our core business model because it's about the experience and not about selling ad space. And luckily with all the NFTs and everything that evolved in our token, there are smarter ways to generate revenue and help everybody grow. Yeah.
Felix. Chris, hold on one sec. Felix.
Well, thanks so much, you guys, for the great conversation. First of all, I have a question. I mean, lots of the conversation right now here at South by, but also internationally, is what you said before around sort of centralization versus decentralization. And what we saw in Web 2.0, if you will, is that mostly the entry points to the internet were centralized because of network effects, because of, I mean, there was economic patterns and tendencies driving these things. There is a reason why there's only 1 or 2 infrastructures like operating systems and hundreds of them. And I'm wondering, when you talk about entry points to the metaverse and to the Motorverse, how do we make sure there's enough interoperability, there is enough different entry points for different audiences using different hardware, different types of content from different decentralized stakeholders, so that the Motorverse and what we call Web.3 isn't just decentral apps in yet again very central hands. I think that's a huge risk that we're confronted with.
I totally agree. That's a massive risk, and that's why I like also the partnership with HTC because they follow a very open approach. However, in terms of user experience, you don't want to bypass the storefront or platforms that are coming with those devices because this will create a lot of user friction. So if you, the beauty is if you take the Vive Flow as a headset, it has a use case at home and in the car. just building something for the car you can't use at home is not really adding to this. So we of course we have to carefully observe it, but I think we are not there yet in terms of operating systems and how this will evolve. But like partners like HTC that push for a more open approach are a good starting point for us. But I think this will stay a challenge for the next iteration. Yeah, agree.
Do you have a thought on that?
I mean, I have lots of thoughts on that, but I think, Web 2.0 was to the social graph as what Web 3 will be to the DeFi matrix. I think there are a number of chains. Most of my work has been on the Ethereum chain, but I'm starting to do more work with Solana, other chains. I mean, the whole point here is plug and play, right? And so I think we're getting there. And we're all kind of united at this point against Facebook.
Although there's
just
some brilliant
philosophically.
folks that have gone over to Meta that are from the inside trying to make a
Yeah,
revolution.
I
And I do
mean-
appreciate the folks that have jumped ship from other locations into Meta right now.
Right. I mean, my hot take on the name change is that even Facebook doesn't like Facebook. That's why they changed to Meta.
Yeah. Fair game.
I have a slightly different perspective because I think everybody likes to beat them up. But what they did actually with the name change was shifting the perspective again that XR actually does add value. And currently with this shift, everybody talks about the metaverse. Suddenly all the VCs
Validation.
have their thesis again around the metaverse. And this helps all the others as well.
Yes.
So I think there is a contribution to the whole XR space, which I really value, and I'm thankful they did. But of course, there are a lot of
Well, they're
other
going to
aspects.
educate. They're
Yeah.
going to educate consumers, and you're not going to have to climb that hill as the founder.
Right.
So
yeah.
they definitely did us a great solid, but that doesn't mean we have to like them.
That's true. That's true. That's true.
Chris, did you have a question? It's coming.
This is going to be semi-self-serving since I'm in charge of onboarding content creators, but I'm going to go ahead and do it anyway.
Hopefully, you don't ask me a question.
No,
And you don't ask me a question.
No. Well, it's I guess primarily directed at Anne, but I think Kathleen, you should weigh in as well. Obviously, our target demographic as kind of laid out initially, because games obviously are the low-hanging fruit, of course, is 13 to 25-year-olds, that people that won't necessarily be driving, people that be in the backseat of the car, right? Now, obviously, longer term, we're looking at level 5 autonomous, and so everybody can play. But even in the short term, and where I want to have my mindset in terms of content is, what kind of content would you, Anne, like to see in the car? And Kathleen, even you, maybe you guys can bounce it off each other. Obviously, you saw what we had. It's obviously very prototype, but you enjoyed it. That's fine. But what kind of content would say, you know what? I want to go take a drive, and I want to have Val drive so I can be in the back seat and do this. That's what I want to hear.
Wow. Okay. I think I'm a planner. So if I was going to go shopping and something was crowded, I would love to just sort of get a layout of the store, be able to plan, where's the sale rack? I'm going to start there. Maybe I start trying on clothes before I get there, save myself time, and then I just buy it while I arrive. They come meet me at the curb and boom. So maybe it's a shopping experience. I have never historically been a nervous flyer, but maybe I'm, able to get a sort of a feel of what I'm going to be seeing when I get through the airport if I'm going somewhere I've never been before. So almost like, skip me ahead in my journey, because when I'm in the car going somewhere, I'm thinking about where I'm going or what I'm going to do after that. So maybe giving me some sort of preview of that. Or, maybe reliving some great memories. Maybe taking a trip down memory lane, literally. That would be pretty cool. I could probably give you 10 more, but let me think about it. I'll find you after. But that's where my head initially went, like, ooh, retail, ooh, travel. I mean, these are fun things.
So I'm going to catch you on the other side. That's exactly where I didn't go, which is great that you went there, because I love hearing that. I'm like, that is a good use case, actually. And the airport, if I'm going to a country I haven't been and sort of doing a test run en route, 22 minutes, if it takes you only 22 to get to an airport, not Los Angeles. But
Well, you
I'll-
don't speak
I'll
the
go
language. What does the hotel look like? What
Right.
do, you know?
Who am I gonna meet?
Things
Right.
you
What is that
can
gonna
preload.
write?
Yeah.
So I thought about driving across the United States, educational content with history that's changing and that's dynamic. And since I work with indigenous peoples and the neurodivergent communities on looking at an object in a virtual world, not just as an object, but its full entire essence. So trees, maybe I'm crossing indigenous land, and trees that represent story for me, and share with me what that is, not just tell me. Let me be embodied in that full experience. So that's where I go, and that's so plausible.
I agree. I couldn't agree more. Just imagine with VR, you can play around with so many things. So just imagine you have Honey, I Shrunk the Kids educational experience. You have like this perspective to the world that you wouldn't get in real life, and then traveling these spaces and experiences this. So it can be all in a very, very entertaining way too. So it's not that I have to have a textbook or a documentary to watch, but it's something I can really live through.
Yeah.
I'll remember, I'm pretty sure, and I would love my son doing this once he's a teenager and allowed to wear VR headsets. So.
You just made me think,
Yeah.
and we're going to wrap this up. When I was, I think I was like 12 or 13, I was hanging out at my brother's fraternity. Not a good idea. Anyway, they said, we're going to make fun with you and your friends. Here's what, and well, I don't know how we were driving a car if we were that young, but we probably had a fraternity brother in the car. Anyway, the whole point of it was that he said, I'm giving you 20 minutes, and I want you to bring a broom back, and you're going to go on a coin flip trip. Every time you flip a coin at an intersection, you go left or right. I'm just now thinking about this with holoride. Going on a coin flip trip, and then you have a designated time and you have to bring an item back. This is just what we did when it was low rent.
Well, treasure hunts and
It was
stuff like
treasure
that.
hunts. It was
Like
treasure hunt.
geocaching, but with a more visual element.
Yeah.
We have one more question over here.
Oh, yeah.
if we have time.
Sarah, introduce yourself.
Hi, so I'm Sarah Lopez. I'm actually the CEO and co-founder of a music company called Connective Music Group. And on that note, I just want to say the creator first. Very much a fan of, obviously. I mean, my company launched because of that. The disservice to artists and labels, clearly taking 80% of their earnings. So, but prior to starting Connective, I was actually an educator for 17 years. So the one thing that I just have to say is when I taught educators or I'd go into districts, children remember 75%, or everybody. You remember 85, actually, 85% of what you experience. And the way that I taught was through experiential learning. And it's the only way, I'm telling you right now, that kids learn. Everything really has to be gamified with kids, everything. I mean, even classroom management. I mean, you get a point, and so just bringing that into any type of educational VR experience, because believe it or not, even though it's really cool for them to experience it in VR, they will lose interest like that. And if they're not earning something, or they're not, competing against each other in some way, shape, or form, it's really important to keep it challenging for them, rigorous, but like exciting and competitive, because that's just the nature of kids, all the way to high school.
So it's good to hear. Yeah. No, it's good to
And I
hear.
have a lot of
Thank you.
ideas with that. We can talk.
Thank you. Was there another question I just saw? Yeah.
I'm David. I work in AI and in fintech. My question is how's the Motorverse, autonomous car, and safety will look like, and how's how Motorverse or holoride gonna contribute for the road safety?
Road safety, yeah. So first of all, it's a solution for backseat passengers only. So no front seat usage. You can be assured, if you start working with car manufacturers, they have a very, very strong focus on safety aspects. What happens in a crash situation? What can you do to prevent misusage? You always have to think about the Tesla driver that puts it on behind the steering wheel. And you want to avoid those things. So you can be assured we put a lot of effort on be compliant to all the safety standards in cars. But once we have autonomous cars, then you can also go a little bit deeper with the tech stack we are building. So if in case there might be an emergency situation come up, you can also reflect this in the device. So this is something that is probably very important for the autonomous use case, so that you deboard people or onboard them to the real world again in certain situations. But we're not there yet. We start, as I said, backseat passengers in private passenger cars, but working with some of the companies that are active in this space. And this is always a top priority, I think, for every car manufacturer, every mobility service provider. The good thing is we're coming from the automotive industry, so we know how important it is and how long things will take. So I think this is something a lot of startups underestimate when they start working with car manufacturers, how long things can take. Not because they want to necessarily do it that long, but they have their processes. They have to comply to so many things. If you ship a car, everything has to be perfect. It's not like in software where you can fix things afterwards. I mean, you still can with software, but there's a lot of hardware involved too with cars. So they're very sensitive on those topics. So this is always a priority for us as well.
And aren't we glad about that?
Yeah, of course, of course. I mean, you don't want to be a guinea pig in certain situations. So yeah.
Any other questions?
Hi, my name is Said, and I used to work for Nils at Audi, actually. So yeah.
Nice to see you here.
Thanks.
Nice to meet
so, Nils, maybe on the autonomous idea. So, the autonomous promise is okay. It is going to open up or free up time, which we can use to do other things, and I suppose we can do other things then. Going into the Motorverse with holoride as well. So, I'm curious to see or to know your ideas around, zooming in 5 to 10 years into the future. We're driving autonomously. Yes, we are also experiencing holoride, but what other categories are there as well? Who might you be competing with? So, and my second thought on that is, are you open for the idea to open the software as an integration into other devices such as our smartphones on, augmented reality and other things as well?
Two very good questions. So, first of all, the tech stack we are building, what it enables for is motion and location-aware content. This can be device agnostic. If you follow us closely, there was a journalist in summer trying something. If you look for holoride and gadget, you might find it. He had a different device. So it gives you a glimpse what might be possible. Since it's public, you can look at it. What are we competing with? So the interesting angle we started our journey looking at autonomous cars initially, said, how can we create something where passengers have a good time? And how can a manufacturer of those vehicles still participate in the value chain? And that's where we said, okay, let's use car data and location data and use the car data to actually create the experience, because then there is a good reason. Providing car data that enables the experience, then you're part of the revenue model or value chain. This is how we started. And then we said, why wait? Because we don't know when we'll have autonomous vehicles at large scale. It was back in 2015. Everyone said, oh, in 2 years we have it, but no, we don't. And then we looked at the market and saw in the statistics how many people do spend time in cars as passengers already. Everyone talks about the passenger economy in the future with autonomous cars, but it's already there. And car manufacturers traditionally looked at buyers and drivers, not so much on the passenger. So we said, hey, let's do that. Secondly, the second angle was car manufacturers try to squeeze content into the center screen. MBUX is great, but still you try to mirror smartphone content. Tesla has Netflix at their center screen, but why? You can take out a phone and a tablet, so there is no added value unless you use the fact that you're traveling in a car and use the car data. So we said, let's do it the other way around. People are carrying their personal devices from one car to another. With autonomous cars, it will increase. You'll switch vehicles all the time. subscription services already go in this direction. You might switch your car every month. But let's extend the car experience to the personal device instead of doing it the other way around, because people will never be further away than like 1 meter from their personal device. They're carrying this around. So that was the different angle, but we are not competing with the in-car entertainment. We are adding to it. We say, hey, as a car manufacturer, you can expand to the personal device. That's great. We're competing against everything you would do otherwise in a car, but it's the competition is far lower than in the home space. You have to do your homework, wash the dishes, watch TV, play game with your console. So there's so much stuff to do at home. In the car, it's very limited. So I think that's why we have a very nice position there. Does this answer your 2 questions? Yeah, a little, yeah. So, but glad to see you.
I appreciate you all being here. This is a come hang out for the rest of the day. And Nils, thank you so much.
Thank
I
you.
so appreciate you and being here in real life. And thank you for just jumping on being a local here, having a connection in real life now, meeting you and not just seeing you in, the Metaverse. And I look forward to getting to know other folks here I haven't met. So thank you all for being here. And we are happy to be in real life.
Thank you, Kathleen. And grab a beer. They have beer at the bar, not just water. So.